valuable to the companies. And also just going through that process forces you to build these networks with your stakeholders, with your suppliers, with your community, creating a board of directors or advisory board. It just deepens you into your community, which, while making these operational changes, it helps your business grow. So those are just a few of the reasons. I have a whole presentation on all of the various reasons why companies choose to become certified. And I'm happy to, someone asked about how I generate business. I'm happy to myself or one of my colleagues jump on the phone on a Zoom with you and go through a more detailed presentation. No commitments required. Part of my goal is really to inspire and educate people too. The more people who know about what it really means to be a certified B Corp, the more meaningful the movement is going to
be. So one of the answers in the chat about the urge to become a B Corp for us is about being part of a larger community of like-minded, like-intentioned people. To quote the great Seth Godin, people like us do things like this.
Exactly. I would say that is probably, if there may have been surveys like this, but I would say maybe be more than consumer recognition, maybe the #1 reason why leaders want to be part of this community, because it is amazing to be part of this group of leaders making this big impact on the economy and just be in a room with like-minded people, as you said.
Pure associate. So thank you for that comment.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, one thing too that pops into my mind about, nowadays, with, there's a focus on resiliency and how resilient is your company. And some of the problems that people have is where are their suppliers and how many suppliers do they have and are they local or not? And, those are some of the questions as you go through that questionnaire. Is it, who are your suppliers? Are they local or not? And how diverse are they? And those kind of questions. And if you've got, one supplier and that supplier is in China and it's in a bad place in China, you're in a bad place. So, it's those kind of questions that kind of make you think, oh yeah, okay, and maybe to some extent you're adjusting yourself or, finding another supplier just to try to make this model work. But, in a time like this, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, good thing, we found that other supplier and good thing we, diversified and that kind of thing. So. Yeah.
Well, that speaks to a question from a few moments ago. Wendy asked, if a company is going through the process and finds it is unable to meet the criteria or has the answers for a particular impact area, do you pause then and make those necessary changes before continuing? Anybody who's gone through the process have a recommendation? Or Jen, how do you coach people on that?
Sure. Well, it really depends on if they get to that 80 points on their current operations and what they do. So if there are things that you want to do in the future, but you're not doing operationally yet, you just will not get any points for those. So if you are going through the process and you answer things a certain way and you get to just above 80 points, and as you're going through the review process, they find, this actually doesn't quite meet our criteria. I mean, they're really strict. And you drop below 80 and you're in the middle of the process, what they do is they let you, they put you on an improvement phase. So you get a few weeks or a month, I forget what the exact time frame is, in order to go back, make some improvements, and resubmit the assessment with a potentially higher score so you can become certified.
This is interesting. Once you have a B certification, do you have to recertify or renew in a certain time frame? 3 years, 5 years? How is that monitored?
It's every 3 years you have to be recertified. And B Lab is also every 2 years they release a new version of the impact assessment. So they're currently on version 6. So when you recertify, it's not on the exact same questions. So there are a lot that do repeat, and they do carry over your answers from the prior version to the new version, but you do have to answer a questionnaire, make sure all the questions are answered accurately again, and they're also constantly raising the bar. So if you had an 85 the first time you certified, and then you have to answer the next question, the next assessment to recertify 3 years later, you're not going to get an 85. You're going to get lower unless you've made some meaningful changes. They're constantly raising the bar, because the universe of companies is, and that's part of their goal, which is one of the amazing things about it, is that even if a company, you may say, wait a second, why is that company certified B Corp? They don't do X, Y, or Z. You do know, like Athleta is a great example. Like you might not, like they make sportswear. Why should they be certified? But it means that they are doing things behind the scenes that are really, really rigorous and with important intention. I think a lot of their points come from how they treat their workers in terms of having strong worker benefits and high pay and a lot of benefits for the workers, and also implementing a lot of solar power and other environmental changes. So, even a big business like that is going to be continuously making positive changes. So no matter what the business is, by going through this process, you're going to be improving your impact on our world.
So for the cost benefit analysis, just to push this a little further, we talked about the benefits, but what are the costs involved to become a B certified company?
So you can go through this entire process like Ben went to for no cost other than your staff and your own personal time. And then there's an annual certification fee, which is based on your revenue. So the lowest is $1,000 a year, and that goes all the way up to $50,000 a year, depending on how big your company is. I think that's the high end. Someone could correct me if I'm wrong. But.
And I will say, as a 1% for the Planet member, that amount of money actually counts towards your 1% for the Planet donation is one thing. But then also, I will say from a, I can only speak for 1% for the Planet, but I can tell there's no doubt that it's true for B Corps as well. It's true that people, there's no doubt that B Corps spend money with other B Corps, just like 1% for the Planet members do so for other 1% for the Planet members. So it is amazing, from a B2B standpoint, when first of all, you get to go to meetings and events and things like that with just amazing other founders that are very like-minded. And it's a great group of people, but also for us, when we're working with a restaurant and they're a 1% for the Planet member, they're like, we could buy our tables from someone we don't know or from someone that's part of our network, and we would rather do that. So, I do think there's this, it can feel like an expensive price tag sometimes. I think it's incredible how much time they spend evaluating your company for that amount of money. First of all, which is pretty amazing. But then also, I do think it, from a financial standpoint, I think it easily makes up for the cost.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but does it help someone else, say a restaurant, like you mentioned, who's going for a B Corp certification, if they are using someone like you who's about to be certified as a supplier?
Again, yes.
Yeah, probably.
There are. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Probably not a lot, like for that particular one, but a little bit. Yeah, maybe a little.
Well, any question that the certification asks regarding your suppliers and whether or not they meet certain social or environmental criteria, they want to see that they have some sort of third-party certification, and B Corp certification will help in that. It can also be LEED certified, or there's a variety of other environmental or fair labor type certifications you can have, or organic. But food is a great example. They won't give extra points for something just being called natural. You have to prove that it is meat.
How will the COVID world impact B Corp certification?
So I think some of the answers that Ben and then Gavin piped in on about why companies become certified touch on this. But of course, many certified B Corps, B Lab with their fees, everyone's going to be hit. It's not going to be easy. We don't know who's going to survive, who's going to do well, what the overall impact on each business is going to be. But that being said, companies that are certified B Corps and meet these criteria are in a great position coming out of this. One reason is what Ben mentioned, that there's been momentum towards this the past 5 to 10 years anyway. The CEO of BlackRock talking about stakeholder capitalism. Basically, stakeholder capitalism was kind of gained legitimacy over the past year. As traditional capitalism we've seen the ill effects of that. the Business Roundtable adopted saying that we have to take into consideration all stakeholders, the World Economic Forum. Every entity has started acknowledging that that's the case. And I think COVID is just accelerating that. How it's important to be local, to know who your suppliers are. And really to have a focus on sustainability. While oil prices are low, I think no one can argue now that our factories and emissions level have a direct impact on the environment. So investors and consumers are only going to be paying more attention to these things, which is going to help the companies that are already operating in a way that's beneficial to society. So I'm optimistic that it's going to be rough in the near to medium term, but I think that a crisis like this will help differentiate the companies with operational integrity from those that aren't. And there will be some companies that are going to be profit generating that get off the ground running and really do well through this. But I think a lot of investors' capital and consumer demand are going to be focused on companies that meet these criteria.
The Economist just published an interesting article about corporate ownership, and they were saying it's not a good time to be owned by a bunch of hedge funds. For the same reason that Gavin was alluding to earlier, that sort of predatorial kind of hit money investment strategy is definitely going to vacate a lot of products and markets now. And this is a kind of a litmus test for who you are as an organization, in the fact that you've got a solid group of investors or community or shared stakeholders around you that buttress you and defend and continue their loyalty to you, is probably one of the other benefits of being in this community, exactly. Yep. I might say at this time. Anyone else out there? I think there's a lot of people have been tuning in. I'd love to hear just from anyone in the community online now with what we've heard. And I've learned a lot. I love the way both Ben and Jen unpacked their world in a very concise way. And I've found this to be a very beneficial hour. So I'm very grateful, and I just want to leave it open for a minute to see if there's any other questions in the chat room. Eleanor, is there any other?
Well, Ben mentioned the pride about being an early adopter in the furniture space. I'm wondering if it's also the kind of thing where the certification accrues in value as more and more and more people become part of the network.
So I think as there are more B Corps in general, it will definitely accrue value, because 3,200 companies is not many companies. It's really, really small. It happens to be that since I shop at Whole Foods a lot, and a lot of the products I buy are B Corps, I see it a lot, and it's, I'm really deep in the world. For people who aren't, they may say, oh yeah, I've seen that, but didn't really think about it or know what it means. So I think there definitely needs to get to a point where of critical mass. And prior to this crisis, their B-Lab, they just doubled their fees last year. They were seeing so much demand, and that's part of the reason why the process takes a long time, that they kind of hit that inflection point of, yes, lots and lots of companies want to become certified. It may slow down for a little bit, but, as that takes off and they're able to process those and the community becomes even bigger, it will hit the point of, as I was trying to say before, that consumers in particular will recognize that there is a benefit to be there. It'll be loud and clear because of the number. Yeah, I suppose you could argue that if every furniture company were certified, it's not as big of an advantage. But if that happens, B-Lab does keep track of your score, and your score is public. And so then it's almost like as the dots, companies would compete by saying, you know what, but my score is better here. So, but I think that's a long time away.
Okay, well, we're right on the hour, and I'm so grateful for Jen and Ben to join us today. And it's encouraging at this time to see such long-term thinkers operate very actively and doing such good work. So I'm very grateful for you to today to share your experience and big ideas with us.